Today, I'm going to tell you something that I have never told anyone. Not my children, not my priest, not even my doctor. For 41 years, I carried this story alone, because every time I tried to speak it, something in my chest would close, like a door that had been shut for so long it forgot how to open. But I am 88 years old now, and I do not have the luxury of waiting anymore. So I'm going to tell you about the man I loved like a brother, the man who sat at my wedding, who held my firstborn son, who I would have died for. And I'm going to tell you exactly what he did with the one secret I trusted him with. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will never look at trust the same way again. My name is Edward. I was born in 1937. In a small town in Ohio. My father worked in a steel mill. My mother raised 5 children in a 2-bedroom house. We did not have much, but we had each other. And in those days, that was enough. I met Daniel Crawford when I was 7 years old. He moved into the house 3 doors down from ours in the summer of 1944. Skinny kid, thick glasses, a gap between his front teeth that made him whistle when he talked fast. I remember the first day I saw him. He was sitting on the porch steps alone, looking at the street like he was waiting for someone to come. That was the beginning of 40 years of friendship. 40 years. We went to the same school, played on the same baseball team, got into the same trouble. When I was 17 and my father lost his job, it was Daniel who showed up at my door with groceries. No announcement, no fanfare, just a bag of food and a look that said, "I know, I'm here." That is the kind of man Daniel Crawford was, or at least, that is the kind of man I believed he was. We both got married in our 20s. I married Catherine in 1961. Daniel married a woman named Louise 6 months later. Our families grew up together. Sunday dinners, summer vacations. Our children called him Uncle Daniel. And in 1965, we started a business together, a small construction company. Just the 2 of us at first, 3 employees by the end of the first year, 12 by the end of the third. Those were good years, hard years, but good. We argued sometimes, the way partners do, but we always came back. Because that is what 40-year friendships do. They bend, but they do not break. Or so I believed. Now I need to tell you something I have never said out loud before. In 1971, I made a mistake. A serious mistake. The kind that a man does not speak about. Not because he is not sorry, but because saying it out loud makes it more real than he can bear. I will not tell you the details of the mistake. That is not the point of this story. What matters is this. It was the kind of mistake that could have ended my marriage, that could have destroyed everything I had built. I carried it alone for 3 months. 3 months of not sleeping. 3 months of sitting across from Catherine at dinner, looking at her face, and feeling like a man standing on thin ice. And then one night, Daniel and I were sitting in his garage, 2 beers each, the radio on low. The kind of quiet that only old friends share. And I told him everything. I do not know why. Maybe I was tired of carrying it. Maybe I thought, if I cannot tell my best friend, who can I tell? Maybe I just needed one person in the world to know the truth about me and still be sitting there when I was done. Daniel listened. The whole time, he listened. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "You are my brother. This goes nowhere. I promise you." I believed him. Of course I believed him. He was Daniel Crawford, the boy who brought groceries when my father lost his job, the man who sat at my wedding, the person I would have trusted with my life. I drove home that night feeling lighter than I had in months, like I had set something down that had been breaking my back. Now, I need you to stay with me here, because this is where the story gets very dark. And I want you to understand not just what happened, but why it happened. Because that is the part nobody ever talks about. 6 months after that night, Daniel and I had our biggest argument in 40 years. A contract dispute, a large one, enough money to matter. I will not go into the details, but I was right. And deep down, Daniel knew I was right. And that made it worse. For 2 weeks, we did not speak. The first time in 40 years that 2 weeks had passed without us talking. And then, on a Tuesday evening, Catherine came home from having coffee with Louise, Daniel's wife. She walked through the door, and I knew immediately something was wrong. She set her purse down, very carefully, the way a person does when they are trying to hold themselves together. She looked at me, and she said, "Is there something you want to tell me?" The ice I had been standing on for 6 months cracked. Daniel had told Louise, and Louise had told Catherine. Everything. Every single word I had spoken in that garage. I sat down at the kitchen table, and for the first time in my adult life, I did not know what to say. Not because I had no words, but because every word I had was the wrong one. Catherine and I almost did not survive it. I say almost because we did. But it took 3 years. 3 years of rebuilding something that had been standing strong for over a decade. Brick by brick. Conversation by conversation. Silence by silence. There were nights when I was not sure she would still be there in the morning. There were mornings when I woke up, and for 1 second before I remembered, life felt normal. And then it all came back. That 1 second before remembering was the worst part. The business did not survive. Daniel and I dissolved the partnership 4 months later. 22 employees. Everything we had built together, divided down the middle like a broken table. He kept the bigger clients. I kept the debt. I will not say more than that. I did not speak to Daniel Crawford for 19 years. 19 years. From 1972 to 1991. He lived 3 streets away the entire time. I saw him once, at a gas station, 1984. We looked at each other across the pumps. Neither of us moved. He looked older, smaller somehow, like a man carrying something heavy. I got in my car and drove away. Now, here's the part I want you to pay very close attention to, because this is the part nobody expects. In 1991, I got a phone call. Daniel Crawford was in the hospital. His heart. They did not know if he would make it. I sat in my kitchen for 2 hours, staring at the wall, and then I drove to the hospital. I do not know why. I still do not fully understand why. He was awake when I walked in, pale, thin, tubes in both arms. But his eyes, when he saw me, were exactly the same as the 7-year-old boy sitting on those porch steps, waiting. He said, "Eddie." Nobody had called me Eddie in 19 years. I sat down beside his bed. We did not talk about what happened, not that day. He said, "I am sorry." That was all. 2 words. And I sat there looking at this man who had broken my marriage, destroyed my business, and taken 19 years of my life, and I felt something I did not expect. I felt grief. Not anger. Grief. For the 40 years before everything broke. For the boy on the porch steps. For the groceries at the door. For the baseball games and the Sunday dinners and all the ordinary moments that made up a lifetime of friendship. I said, "I know." And I meant it. Daniel Crawford died in 1997, 6 years after that hospital room. We had talked a few times in those 6 years, never like before. You cannot rebuild 40 years in 6, but enough to close something. I went to his funeral. I stood in the back, and I thought about that garage, that night, those 2 beers, that quiet. And I thought, what if I had never told him? What if I had carried it alone? What if I had found another way? Therapy, prayer, a journal, a stranger, anything. Anything except handing the most dangerous thing I owned to another human being. I am 88 years old. Catherine passed in 2019. We made it. 58 years. But those 3 years, those 3 rebuilding years, were 3 years we cannot get back. My business, I rebuilt it, alone this time, smaller, but mine. My friendship with Daniel was never what it was. Some things, once broken, can be repaired, but they are never the same shape again. So here is what I want you to understand. Daniel Crawford was not a bad man. He was a man who had a weapon, and in one moment of anger, he used it. And that is the thing about secrets. When you give someone your secret, you are not just sharing information. You are handing them a loaded gun and hoping, with everything you have, that they never find a reason to point it at you. Most people never do. Most people are good. But everyone has a moment of anger, of jealousy, of pain, when good people do terrible things. And if you have given them that gun, they do not even have to think. It is just already there. There are 3 things I want you to take from my story. First, your deepest secrets are yours alone. Not your best friends, not your brothers, not even your partners in many cases. If you need to release something, find a professional. Find someone who has no stake in your life, a therapist, a counselor, someone who cannot use it against you because they have nothing to gain. Second, no friendship, no matter how long, no matter how deep, is immune to a moment of weakness. Daniel and I were brothers for 40 years, and it took one argument, one night of anger, for 40 years to mean nothing. People are people, even the best ones. And third, the most important one, forgiveness is not for them. It is for you. I spent 19 years not forgiving Daniel Crawford, and every one of those years, I was the one in prison. He was living his life 3 streets away, and I was the one who could not breathe. The day I walked into that hospital room, I did not do it for him. I did it for me, because I was tired of carrying the anger on top of everything else. And when he said sorry, and I said, I know, something lifted. Not everything, not all at once, but something. I am 88 years old. I have very few regrets about my life. I worked hard, I loved well, I showed up. But if I could go back to that garage, to that night, to those 2 beers, and that quiet, I would have stayed quiet too. Some weights you have to carry alone, because the moment you put them down, you do not know whose hands will pick them up. This is dark wisdom. Have you ever trusted someone with something precious and watched them use it against you? Tell me your story below. I read every single one.